first of all, Jonathan, I've got to say, I've loved you since Velvet Goldmine, so I'm a big fan.
Oh, that was a long time ago when I was a young child. I was a young pretty boy with Todd Haynes. He's just about to make a film about Peggy Lee, and then he's making a film about Sigmund Freud.
Okay, so one of my all-time favorite film genres is the gangster film, and I do love a good gangster flick. And Alessio, you've mixed that with the world of art as well, with this film. Is this story one that you've always wanted to tell?
Yes, absolutely. And it took a lot of time and effort, and a lot of work on characters. I started from the characters of the classical noirs, which are the anti-hero, which is John Kaplan, played by Jonathan Rhys Meyers. And he's an anti-hero because he does the right thing for the wrong reason, or the wrong thing for the right reason. Then there's the antagonist, Michael Rubino, the good wife, Paz Vega, the femme fatale, Annabelle Belmondo, and the innocent, played by Jeremy Piven, and the character is Vincent. And then I added a twist on the classical characters of noir by adding an element of chaos, which is the character of Shaky, who brings an art piece to New York, and chaos ensues.
I also wanted to ask as well, with all the paintings in the world, why did you decide to pick Andy Warhol's Pink Marilyn?
Because the whole movie on a certain level was a reflection on icons and on pop culture. So obviously Marilyn Monroe was already an icon. Then Andy Warhol took her photo and made it become another icon of pop art and pop culture. And so I was really reflecting on what are the icons of pop culture on so many aspects. For example, even with the composer, our composer Marco Beltrami took the Ave Maria piece, very famous classical pieces, and transformed them into something else. Now, John Kaplan, the lead, played by Jonathan Rhys Meyers, he does the same thing. He takes the Marilyn thing. I don't want to spoil the movie, but he takes the Marilyn and transforms it into something else. So it was an operation about icons, pop culture, and transformation.
Okay, and also, you know, what you always get these kind of films where it's art and crime seem to fit perfectly hand in hand with each other. Why do you think that works for both of you?
Well, to be a good criminal, you have to be an artist. Being a good criminal is a fucking art, you know?
Yeah.
So it is one thing. You're just an artist on the outside of the law. You're an outlaw. So, but it takes a great amount of artistry. To be a successful criminal, you have to be a genius.
Okay, and Jonathan, also you've had many different types of roles. You've had a few thrillers as well. What was it about this story that got you excited?
Well, I like the character of John Kaplan because he's somebody who's constantly under an enormous amount of pressure. He seems to be fighting 1,000 invisible swords at all times. He's desperately in love with Paz Vega's character, but he doesn't know how to be, you know, a good guy. He comes from the criminal world. John Kaplan is a forger, an exceptional forger, and so when Lord Morgan enters, Michael Madsen enters, they have a past, and so you get to see flashbacks of Lord Morgan beating the fucking shit out of John Kaplan. And so John he's been in this sort of like murky little world of art. If you've ever been around the New York art scene, it's a mafia in itself. Who decides who's going to be a good artist? Who decides what's good art? You know, I've seen, you know, I mean, it's, you know, is it the Kloon or the Koenig or something who does all those sort of, you know, blown up balloon sort of things? I can't remember the name completely, but I fucking can't stand them. I'm like, what's the fucking crack here? I don't get this at all. I mean, I can get William Turner, I can get Picasso, I can get Vasquez, I can get sort of, I can even get Mark Rocco on a certain level. But there's some art that's going on today that I just don't fucking understand. You know, I just can't understand it. But then that's art. I'm not meant to understand it. It's interpretive. It's taste. Some person, like if everybody knew, you see, the thing is, art, the problem with art is this: nobody knows what's good art until they're told. Because if anybody knew what good art is when they saw it, then all our great-great-grandparents would have been buying fucking Van Goghs when they were being sold for 7 guilders on the fucking streets of Paris. Now they're selling for $50-60 million because people have to be told what's good. And then they bang it up on their fucking walls so they can impress their friends. Or or more importantly, they bang a forgery. The real painting always exists in a safety deposit box somewhere. It's too dangerous to have a real Van Gogh. So when a rich person buys a real Van Gogh, they get in an exceptional forger to make an absolute forgery of it, which they hang in their living room. But the real Van Gogh is hidden somewhere because it's worth $50 million. You don't want somebody throwing a glass. Yeah, well, you don't want some fucking drunk lunatic at a party suddenly spilling a whole glass of Beaujolais over your nice painting. And you can't put it behind glass, because if you put it behind glass, it sucks it of oxygen. And so the painting starts to flake. So you have to have the painting in its actual form. You have to be able to touch the paint. So to keep the restoration, to keep the painting, the colors in the painting, it's most difficult with Vermeer, because Vermeer was so much about shadow and light that to expose it to the sunlight even would immediately start to dampen the colors.
Okay, I was actually hoping you were going to mention there's a scene, an intimate scene with you where you're covered in paint. I was going to say that was the thing that drew you in, but that must have been really difficult to shoot as well.
What, the sex scene with Paz Vega where we're covered in paint?
Yes.
No, she's Paz Vega. She's one of the most beautiful women in the world. What's difficult about that?
Fair enough. I was just thinking it might be a little bit slippery.
Well, sex usually is a little bit slippery if you're doing it right. It's the most difficult scene we had to shoot in the entire film was the scene with Lord Morgan, because what had happened was we had built this set, but we built it in this incredible location where they've rebuilt New York at the studio in Bulgaria. The problem is that it's fucking cold in Bulgaria, and there was no doors. There was no windows. We hadn't just gotten these in. So by the time we got to the set, it was -3 on set. And so the first scene in the movie was like, how the fuck are we going to do this? So we had all these like heaters on and such, but we have to be in our clothes, and we have to sort of like, we had to drink hot tea to avoid the breath coming out of our mouths, because this is meant to be in New York and we're meant to be inside an actual art studio. So that was rather complicated. The first morning we walked on set, we were all sort of taking a little bit back about how cold it was.
And there's also, for both of you, there's a couple of hairy scenes in there with an explosion and a raging fire as well. Obviously, these would have been done under strict safety protocols, but was that quite scary to film? Was there any kind of like, did you feel like any kind of danger, or did anything happen that, you know, anybody get injured?
No, it's nobody got injured miraculously, because the fire was the fire, and there was the whole fucking place is on fire. But you're in the character. You have to do the things that are in the character. So sometimes you have to walk through fire. And you know, as long as you can walk through it quickly, you won't get burned or anything like that. Now, if I had to wear a long-haired blonde wig or something like that, we might have had a few more issues. But you know, it was. But once you're in the character, you're in the character. Once the cameras are turned on, danger doesn't even come into it. I mean, on Vikings, I was smashed into walls by horses, and you know, you kind of don't feel it. You feel it in the evening when you go home and you try to have a cup of tea and you can barely move your arms. But in the moment when you're doing it, you're in the character, you're playing the character. You don't, it's like, look, there's a difference between film and sort of like and theater. Theater is and I don't do theater, I've never done theater, but when I've gone to see it, it seems like an atmosphere of total pretense. When you're making a film, it has to seem like this is real life, and you are a fly on the wall watching these people do their thing. So you can't go into it with some sort of danger, or if I'm going to get burnt, and you can't do a sex scene thinking about how your fucking abs look, or, you just can't do that. It's just like, you're either going to be the character or you're not going to be the character. And if you're going to be the character, be it. But keep your actor fucking ego. You hang that on the door when you come in.
And everything was done with safety, and there were technicians. Everybody was making sure everything was done properly. I mean, the effects were done practical, the fire was real, but everything was done with safety measures, safety issues, and everything was.
Yeah. Okay. And Alessio, you've obviously, you've got Jonathan on the cast, and you've got a few other obviously top names like Jeremy Piven and Emile, can't even say his name, Emile Hirsch, who seems to channel his inner Tony Montana at one particular point. Did you experience getting any of these casts together?
I'm sure logistically it was complicated because we had people flying from maybe more than 10 countries to the film set, but it was a blast. It was a blessing. There are some of the most talented actors on the planet. I was so lucky and so grateful, and it was so cool. And Jonathan Rhys Meyers' performance in the movie is incredible. The characters has so many aspects, like a diamond. It has, it's not just. So when you work on characters from noir, in the classical noir films, every character is double. Every scene is double. You never know who's doing what. But we took that to a different extent, in which characters have so many different layers. I wanted to show the good side of the bad guy. I wanted to show the bad side of the good guy. And so the character of John Kaplan has so many sides. And being the anti-hero, he does the right thing, which is opening the gallery, but for the wrong reason. So I was super happy, everything was wonderful. And Jonathan Rhys Meyers played the character so well in portraying all these different aspects of the diamond as a metaphor. So.
Well, thank you both for your time tonight, and good luck with the movie as well. It's been a pleasure talking to you both.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yes.
Nice.
Hey You